Shola's Night with a Billionaire Part 2 by Storiesfolktales. That night, Shola nervously watched as the men continued chatting with the ladies as they discussed on random topics. At that very moment, she wished she hadn't followed her friend Chidinma to a place like this. When it was time for the men to retire for the night with their ladies, they all got up one after the other, taking their ladies to their private rooms in the lounge. When Shola got to the room with the fourth billionaire, he noticed her nervousness and poured her a wine from a wine bottle. "Have some wine," he told her, handing her a glass of wine. "It will relax your nerves," he added, nodding with an assured smile on his lips. Shola shakily took the wine from him and sipped it. The wine really tasted good. It looked like those expensive wines from the wine cellars. She stole a glance at the older man sitting beside her once again. He was fixing his gaze on her hungrily. "You look nervous," the man stated for the second time that night. "Relax, dear. I don't bite." He placed a hand on her shoulder and said. Shola nodded quietly. "My name is Honorable Jayola Thomas. Do not worry. I will take very good care of you, okay?" He assured her again as he wore a grin on his face. Shola nodded as she smiled shyly. She was so uncomfortable around this man. Nevertheless, she continued to listen to him as he spoke on and on until she began to relax a little around him. Shola began to feel sleepy as she sipped more wine. Her eyes struggled to stay awake, but somehow the drowsiness was strangely so heavy on her as she struggled to stay awake. She saw Honorable Jayola Thomas looked at her with a mischievous grin on his face as he watched her struggle to stay awake. "It's okay, dear. Do not force it. Just sleep," he told her amidst a mischievous laugh as he took the glass from her hands. What did you do to me?" Shola managed to ask him, but he laughed the more. "I didn't do much, girl. I only put sleeping pills in your drink so I can do what I want to do with you," he replied amidst a wicked laugh. Shola struggled to stay awake with panic in her eyes, crying so desperately to leave the place, but her eyes betrayed her and gave into the darkness as she closed her eyes to sleep. When she finally woke up from sleep, she found herself lying down in another room. The room was very strange and alarming. It looked like a shrine. There were a lot of water pots, potions, artifacts in there, and calabashes filled with different concoctions inside of it. Shola saw Honorable Jayola standing over her. He tied the red clothes around his waist, carrying an heavy calabash in his hands. When the Honorable saw Shola awake, he was shocked as he stared at her with an hard expression on his face. Shola struggled to get up, but her hands and legs were tied with a rope. She began to panic. Please let me go, sir. I beg you," she cried desperately. The Honorable looked at her with extreme surprise on his face. "You are supposed to still be sleeping," he shouted at her with confusion written on his face. "No, sir. Please let me go back to my hostel. I won't tell anyone about what happened here tonight, sir. I promise." Shola continued to plead desperately as she struggled to loosen the ropes tied on her hands and feet. "Shut up. Why should I let you go when I need a virgin for my sacrifice? And you are a virgin. I cannot let you go. Now I command you to sleep," Mr. Jayola said authoritatively as he raised the calabash over her. But Shola wailed loudly. Please let me out of here, sir, she shouted desperately. The Honorable became more infuriated at Shola's attitude. You are so stubborn, he shouted. Why are you not like the other girls who respond to my charms? He shouted at Shola in frustration. Fine, since you have refused to sleep, then I will continue my rituals while you are awake. And let me warn you, do not even think of shouting because nobody will hear you. This place is soundproofed, and so the more you shout, the more no one hears you, he said and laughed wickedly, raising a calabash above her. He began to chant some incantations. When he was done, he moved towards her and tore the strap of her gown with his bare hands. Just as he did this, he froze in shock immediately. You! Who are you? He asked her, with fear written in his eyes. Shola stopped wailing and stared at him in confusion. The Honorable stumbled on the ground in fear as he stared at her. He pointed at a birthmark on her shoulders that had the symbol of a star. That mark? How did you get that mark on your shoulders? Who sent you to me? The Honorable kept stammering in shock as he asked Shola, his words tripping over themselves. Shola looked at him dumbfounded. She didn't understand why a man who was about to do her evil suddenly becomes afraid of her because of a birthmark on her shoulders. Stop looking at me like a moron, you vicious spy. I know it was Mr. Richards that sent you to me because he is the only untouchable one among us. He is the only one with that birthmark, and that is why he would stoop so low to send his daughter to spy on me. Honorable Jayola shouted in frustration. Shola blinked. Mr. Richard was the 5th billionaire she met that night, the only man who didn't show any interest in her. What was Honorable Jayola insinuating? That Mr. Richard sent her? Shola thought to herself. The Honorable wiped perspiration from his face as he thought hard on what to do. He couldn't harm the girl because of her birthmark. By virtue of the mark on her shoulders, she was a Sidite. If he uses any charm on her, it will return to him with a great repercussion. He could not also kill her because it is forbidden for a Sidite to be harmed in any way so as not to incur the wrath of the Almighty. She was a reject for the renewal of his power. In fact, the repercussion would have been so great on his life if he had tried to use the charms on her. Besides, if she was connected to Mr. Richards, it would be dangerous for him to kill her. He cut loose the ropes he used in binding her hands and feet with a knife. Get out of here! I don't want to see you ever again. Honorable Jayola backed at Shola. Shola sprung to her feet, clutching her bag, which lay fallow on the ground beside her. She began to run desperately, dashing out of the strange room, her heart racing like a drum. Her bare feet slapped against the cold tiled floors as she ran through the eerily quiet corridor. The shrine's strange artifact seemed to glare at her, but she didn't dare slow down. She had to get out now. Her legs trembled, but she kept running until she reached the gates. Luckily, it was ajar. Shola slipped through and didn't stop until she found a busy road. Taxi! Taxi! Please! She waved desperately. A yellow cab screeched to a halt. The driver eyed her curiously as she climbed in panting. Where to? He asked her. University of Lagos campus, she replied, her voice shaky. The driver nodded and sped off. Shola leaned back, clutching her bag tightly. Her mind raced with questions. What was it about the birthmark on her shoulder that terrified Honorable Jayola so much? And what did Mr. Richard, the fifth billionaire, have to do with any of this? Find out what happens after in Shola's Night with a Billionaire Part 3. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to Esther Storiesfolktales to get interesting stories such as this. Thank you.